Hi everybody, welcome to the Healthcare SoundBytes channel. Today, my guest is Aleksandar Jevtic, the CEO of Trustvector AI. We will talk about artificial intelligence and its application in the healthcare industry, and also we'll discuss how it can change our lives. So let's get started. Hi Alex, welcome to the Healthcare SoundBytes. Really nice to have you here. So can you start by briefly telling about yourself and your company?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited that you're doing the podcasts, and I think it's wonderful to see people that I've known for many years, taking it to podcasts and really sharing opinions with people and getting people educated on certain topics. So first and foremost, thank you for doing it, and thank you for having me. Alex Jevtic, I'm a co-founder and CEO of a company called Trustvector. Trustvector is an organization that focuses on advancing trust between humans and machines. And the way we do that is really by helping organizations uncover potential issues in their AI solutions. We look at trustworthy artificial intelligence, and we focus on that squarely. And we really help people and organizations look under the cover of their solutions, all the way from the very beginning and inception of their solutions, from the design through their implementation and data analysis and data selection, through training and all the way to implementations and kind of closing the loop and doing it back all over again. We truly believe that in order to have artificial intelligence trusted by humans, we have to have a way to really understand what's going on in each of these stages. How is governance being conducted? So we really focus on those areas, really helping people understand what's going on with the solutions, helping them uncover potential issues, doing the assessments of the solutions, helping them structure their organizations so that they have everything that is needed in order to do this type of work to make sure that the solutions are trustworthy ultimately.
Got it. And AI has become a hot topic all over, right? Especially with the Chat GPT. Like everybody is like, I think the day one, there were more people signing up than anybody would have signed up on Instagram or Facebook. So what is AI in layman terms?
Yeah, I get this asked all the time, right? And it's kind of funny. I think I ended up in a career where I always have to explain what I do, right? Like I've spent 18 years in consulting, and you explain that to people, like what exactly does that mean? And now I'm doing something relatively similar. I'm still advising people, right? And I'm auditing solutions, and I still have to explain that. But I think it's a great question, right? Because a lot of people don't even know maybe what artificial intelligence is. And the way I kind of put it is, it's really, mathematical constructs that are being put together in very advanced ways through a set of algorithms to computer systems, that these computer systems really start to learn a little bit on their own and start to behave almost and think like humans. So you can think of them almost as a sidekick to humans in a lot of cases that can really advance the way humans function and the way they do jobs, but even the way we live our lives today. So it's really kind of an augmentation, if you will, right now of a lot of things that humans do in these systems that are able to learn on their own and advance. Now, we can get really, really, really deep into this, and there are different types of AI and so on and so forth. But I would say, in simplest terms, that's kind of how I would put it and explain it to people.
Got it. So today we will focus on AI in the healthcare industry, right? So we see a lot of skepticism among the leaders, the executives. And do you know why and like how can that be overcome?
Yeah. So first, I think we have to recognize that I always say AI has kind of left the lab and entered the boardroom very quickly, and in that process of entering the lab, exiting the lab and entering the boardroom very quickly and starting to being used, there are certain steps that maybe would have normally occurred had it taken a longer time, but they haven't occurred. We ended up with this situation where we have a lack of standards when it comes to developing artificial intelligence. And there aren't really policies and rules around what needs to be done. Now that's looking back 5 years ago. Good news is that there's a lot of advancement that happened in the last 5 years. There are a lot of legislations and policies that have come up. But this is where we're kind of coming from, right? We're coming from a situation where tinkering in the lab entered the boardroom and started being used without some proper steps being put into place. Now everything would have been fine and dandy had there not been unintentional consequences. So we've seen in the last 5-ish years a rise in these unintentional consequences that have come out of this rapid use of artificial intelligence technology in the production space or in the boardroom, right? And there are many examples from healthcare to finance to higher ed that have really surfaced up, and you and your viewers have heard them, a good number of them, right? Like we've heard students being discriminated by computer systems that are monitoring the online proctoring exams because the system wasn't able to detect, a dark-skinned face and kept saying that the person is not there and would fail them, right? That's a perfect example of an artificial intelligence solution that produced an unintentional consequence because it wasn't trained on enough dark-skinned population. Right? We've seen it in healthcare. We've seen issues around, providers that are unintentionally discriminating against certain group of people because they used something like, let's say, cost of care as a proxy for needs, and therefore the systems recommended procedures to people that were traditionally paying for certain procedures, who turned out to be well educated and white. And we're not recommending procedures to those that weren't paying in the past because they didn't have the means, because they were, maybe in their social way, they were disadvantaged. So they were like, Hispanic, let's say, and black population in this particular use case, right? And these are real cases. This is really what has happened. So when those use cases and those unintended consequences started to hit the media, right, because people are being affected, this is where you start to lose trust. And I think this is the key that is driving this mistrust in artificial intelligence. In healthcare especially, right, we're dealing, regardless what you pick, whether we're talking providers or payers or pharma, life sciences or med device, ultimately we're talking with human beings that if anything goes wrong, usually there's a significant impact, right? There's a significant issue that can happen. So the mistrust comes, I think, primarily from that angle of there's been enough wrong things that have happened. And, people have been viewing this artificial intelligence as essentially a black box and saying, well, we pipe some stuff in and then something happens and then something comes out on the other end. And like, how do we trust what's happening in there? So you can unpack that a little bit, but like there are concerns around data, right? And the quality of data and where is that data coming from and the bias within data itself, right? Because we have to recognize the fact that when we collect the data, there's already bias in that collection of data. Right? Again, there are many examples, right, that come from the bias being built in. So we're not going to run away from bias. The question is, we need to be able to recognize where it is, and then either try to eliminate it if we can, or at least be transparent about the fact that, an example, right, all the data we could get was a light-skinned population, and when we used our AI system to detect, whether your skin has melanoma or not, it's not going to work on dark-skinned population. Dear doctor, just so you know, right? But that's not a live example. That actually happened in Australia, and people were not aware, so they started to mistrust the solution.
Yep, AI is a machine; it's an intelligence built, but what's more important is the underlying data, right? Everything is based on the data.
Yeah, everything is based on data for sure as one of the key starting points and key starting steps, right? The processes that designers and the algorithm implementations take place and the models that take place. There's also a lot to do with that. How do you take that data? Which parts of data you use for training? Which do you use for validation? Like there's a lot of components to it, and I think that ultimately, there's been a lot of focus on accuracy. Can a model predict accurately what is going to happen? And in that process of predicting and focusing on accuracy, we had unfortunately, skipped these other important steps that you could have an accurate model, but that doesn't mean that the model is safe. Or in other words, that it's not going to produce unintended consequences. And all of these examples that I kind of mentioned, all of those models were accurate until you look at the details and you go, well, wait a minute. But what about this scenario? What about this group of people? And you're like, oh, well, we didn't have data for it. Of course, it's not covering it. Right now, I want to mention one thing because I attended some seminar by one of the universities here in Chicago area, and there was an interesting comment from one of the professors, and this professor said, we shouldn't call this unintended consequences, because it diminishes the importance or the impact of it. And I'm kind of torn between a little bit, right? Because to me, an unintended consequence is truly what it is. Nobody truly sat down and created an algorithm that on purpose discriminate against somebody. So the outcome is unintended consequence. But that doesn't mean that is not important. It was unintended, yet it doesn't mean that it should be looked over, that should be swept under the rug or anything like that. Actually, to me, it means that it needs to be really, really looked over and really kind of worried about. So again, just for your viewers, right? When I say unintended, I'm not trying to diminish it. Actually, we're focused on is the unintended consequences and eliminating those.
I mean, this industry has grown organically, right? Like with people's experience, their own intelligence, and like people bring variety and creativity, etc. So when it comes to these kind of suggestions, right? Like people may feel, I trust my gut feel versus what AI is going to suggest. There are a lot of people who say that I have a lot of experience. Do I really need to believe what AI is suggesting? So what are your thoughts on that?
Gut feel is an interesting thing. So let's take a slight left turn and we'll come back to it. Let's dissect it a little bit, right? What is really a gut feel, right? If you think about biology and we think about our brains, we have three portions of our brain. Like the outermost part is the neocortex, and that's focused on language. It's focused on our rational analysis, analytics, and those kind of things. But the inner two parts are the limbic brain, and the limbic brain is responsible for all of our decisions, and it doesn't have capability for language. It's responsible for feelings. It's responsible for trust. It's responsible for a lot of other things. And Simon Sinek does a really good job when he talks about this distinction, and he does it in a context of, being able to communicate very powerfully, what you're doing and how you're doing it, really focusing on why you're doing it. I feel that this component of why do people sometimes feel that their gut feel, and obviously we don't have brains in our gut. It's really the limbic brain that is saying, I trust this or I don't trust that. But because it doesn't control the language, we don't have a way to express it. So we say, you gave me all the numbers, but it doesn't feel right? Ultimately, it means that people are not really bought into it, right? And I've had several live experiences with folks that are experts in their field, that really know well, their customers. They're working with their customers. And it was interesting to see them react to predictions from the artificial intelligence machine. And what was very interesting to me is that I was expecting that they're going to say, well, I don't need this. I know my customers. But the response was very interesting. The response was, well, you know what? These predictions that you shared with us actually confirm what I know about customers. I know them really well. And all of this confirms everything that I know about the customers, but I don't get that from any other place. All other reports, all other things I'm getting from the organization are not telling me that. Actually, I'm dealing with these customers on a side, outside of all these reports, because I know that these customers really are important to me. So what happened in that scenario is that artificial intelligence and the predictions that it's able to make has produced basically validation for their gut feel and why they knew that customers need to be interacted with. But then because it was able to, go through large amounts of data and ultimately produce essentially insights that said why and explain why these customers are predicted to behave a certain way, it gave him an additional validation. And I, to be honest with you, I wasn't, as somebody in the field, I actually wasn't expecting that's going to be a response. I was ready for the fight kind of thing, and go, well, let's kind of dissect this. So it's an interesting use case where, even the experts in certain areas, when they're faced with good AI, in a sense of not just a recommendation, but a recommendation that has transparency, explainability, I should say, built into it that says, and this is why we're saying this. That starts to build trust. Now, that's one example. To your question in general, do people feel that they make better decisions than artificial intelligence? It's hard to say, but I would be, I can go on record probably saying that I do not believe that humans make better decisions without artificial intelligence. And here's what I mean by that. Artificial intelligence to me is an augmentation of our ability to make decisions. If you can have an artificial intelligence that is able to process large amounts of data very quickly, produce a recommendation and explain, and that's the key piece, explain why this recommendation is produced, I believe that you could make better decisions. And the two separately, AI on its own and somebody just simply accepting it without understanding what's going behind it, or human beings doing their own analysis and not being able to produce, to analyze all of this data very quickly. I think that those two things, it's a toss-up who's going to make a better recommendation, and a better decision. So I'm all about augmenting, human capabilities, if you will.
Right. So in short, can I say that the AI is helping with giving a more filtered suggestion, so you're able to make quicker decisions and more informed decisions, right? So that way, there are things you may have forgotten or even not even thought about it. So AI model would help you to dig that up and surface it up for you, so you're not forgetting something.
Yes, in many cases, I would say that's definitely true. We're still talking a little bit about more of a futuristic state. Most of the AI solutions today don't have the explainability component, which is one of the 5 AI trustworthiness components. And that's where we have to get to, right? We have to make sure that all these solutions that are being produced do have explainability built in one way or another, so that it's very clear how decisions have been made. And that's not an easy task.
Right.
Especially when you think about, complex artificial intelligence solutions, such as neural networks, right? Or like Chat GPT is a perfect example, right? It's a large neural network, and it's a natural language processing component, but it's going to be very hard to really be able to kind of provide that transparency. But organizations are working on it. We've seen, for example, just Google, just the other day, right, saying how they're going to provide at least citations of what's being used. So I'm very happy that this is on the forefront of people's thinking, and that they're thinking how to kind of address that.
Yep. And in the healthcare industry, our customers are the patients, right? So how does AI help both the agents who's taking the calls and the patients? How does it enhance their experience from how it's currently being done today?
There are many ways that AI is already doing that. Some of it is a little bit hidden, right? Some of it is hidden from the patients, and it's more on the HCP side, right, or on the provider side, right? So just the examples of ability to leverage image processing and artificial intelligence to detect particular diseases from MRIs or other scans has been advancing quite a bit in recent years, right? And to me, that's like a great tool to help ultimately really help with healthcare, right? I mean, that's that ability is really great that it's happening. Now, is it accurate all the time? No, it's not. It's all advancing, right? And there are many examples where it actually didn't work really well, but I would say that's okay. You're kind of learning and you're moving forward, right? So I see that in that area, like things are advancing quite a bit, So patients don't necessarily see that, but I do believe that once it is done properly, and if we can have artificial intelligence detect particular diseases faster, we're going to get to the treatments faster, right? And that alone can result in saving lives. So that's one thing that I think patients need to think about or be aware. On the interaction side and just the experience component for the patients, right? Maybe let's look at the example. I was just trying to book my annual appointment the other day with my hospital, and I was trying to do it through their app. And it's frustrating. To be honest with you, it's frustrating. All I want to do is book an annual physical exam. You would argue it's pretty simple, right? Instead, right, when I go to the app, it says click book appointment. I click book appointment. Then it says, is it integrative medicine, specialty, internal medicine, this medicine? Okay, integrative medicine. Then, is it acupuncture? Is it this? Is it that? Okay, so it wasn't integrative. Then I have to go back.
Right.
Internal medicine. Okay, it's like there are all these steps, all these clicks that I have to go through, where wouldn't it be great if I simply, I don't want to provide a solution, right? But like, wouldn't it be great if I had essentially a conversation with the app? And the app said, what are you trying to do? And I say, oh, look, I'm trying to book an annual exam, right? And then the system goes, oh, okay, no problem. Your primary is this. Her availability in the next 10 days is this, this, and that. Right? Would you like any of these? Right? If not, then let's look at particular. It can be a lot simpler, a lot conversational, a lot. I could get through booking an appointment in probably minutes. Instead, I still haven't booked it because I simply got frustrated. I'm like, well, I'm just going to call. I'm going to call an agent, right? And I'll come talk to them. So I think there's, for example, that's an example of where, combination, and we're talking about combination of technologies. It's now artificial intelligence with a little bit of, robotic processing, automation, scheduling things. But we can combine those technologies to really kind of enhance the experience, right?
Got it.
When I think about call centers, right, and agents, there's a lot. There's some way that is probably being done. I remember even 5 years ago we were trying to do some of this, but there's a lot that we can use, especially around natural language processing. And components of really analyzing the speech, for example, of a patient, and based on certain cues from what it is that they're saying, we can very quickly help the agent on the receiving side that is talking to get very fast to where they need to get to, right? So, in the same example, if I actually called and I said, "Hey, I'm calling to book, an appointment with for my annual exam," right? All of that information, what I just said, combined with the fact that my phone number is tied to my profile, right, can get the agent immediately to the calendar of my HCP. Like it can be in an instant. All they have to do, which what they legally have to do to make sure that I am who I am, so they ask you for your birthday and date of birth and whatever, your full name and stuff like that, right? But that can be a couple of seconds. And we can quickly kind of move through it. And everybody is more efficient and everybody is functioning a little bit better, right?
Yep.
There are many other examples, right? Like, helping agents pull up, very quickly, documents, for example, that are necessary for particular situations when somebody's calling, whether it's frequently asked questions or whether it's some documents that need to be filled out, medical documents that need to be sent out. All of that can be very quickly automated, and suddenly agents are happier because they're not bouncing between the systems trying to do their work. Patients are happier because they took them only a few minutes to book an appointment, sign whatever is needed to sign from HIPAA perspective, right, or something like that, and you're off, and you can kind of keep going around your work. So a lot of efficiencies, I think, that just kind of top of the mind that are there that can be thought about.
Yeah, and I really probably it's synonymous with everyone. Like, I hate waiting at the lobby to be called into the doctor, and then the nurse talks to you, then another 15-20 minutes. So it's almost like you spend an hour just getting to the doctor. So hopefully the RPA kind of fixes that issue and that time reduces as much as possible. And the other places I'm thinking is, as I'm talking to the doctor is doing a lot of typing, right? Feeding into the notes and etc. So can AI play a role, or even RPA play a role there, and so that they're more focused talking to me than focused typing the notes? Maybe they are good at multitasking, but I get a feeling like, am I being slightly ignored and they're focusing more on the notes?
There's also some proof that nobody's good at multitasking. that we've kind of convinced ourselves that we're really good at multitasking, but we're really not. As human beings, we're not really good at that. And I agree with you. Yeah, but when I think about those notes, and those notes, those clinical notes are very important. There's huge opportunity over there. Right? There's a huge opportunity to really analyze the discussions, and then not only transcribe it. And I gotta say, I mean, these NLP models are getting better and better at being able to transcribe things. I mean, I have an accent, and I just tested it recently on something, and it did a really good job. It did a really good job at capturing what it is. I mean, 90% of the time, what I was trying to say. So these models are getting great, right? There's definitely, you're 100% right, opportunity to leverage that, to capture the notes so the doctor can have more focused interaction. And then, being able to extract the most important components. And then with RPA, as you say, even potentially, I don't know, follow-ups, scheduling, sending documentation, whatever it is necessary, right? And all of this, just to be clear, all of this can be done or should be done with what we call with a human in the loop. Essentially, doctors saying, yep, these are the correct notes, right? Yes, these are the correct actions. Yes, I need to send these documents. It's not like, right, we're not saying that this should completely happen automatically without doctor having any involvement. Far away from that. It's more of advancing their ability to really be focused on patients and then doing the work for them in the background.
Got it. And every provider or pharma licenses industry, everybody has a different business process, right? So is AI nimble enough that it can be easily configured that it works as per their needs, or is there a longer process cycle to fit it to their needs?
You know what? The reality is kind of that AI is as you say, nimble. It is, right? It can be very, very custom and very small for particular needs. Or it can be scaled and to be very large, right, for large-scale needs. Now, we just have to be kind of careful when we're using what technology, right? Like, AI itself, right, is focused on large amounts of data and being able to make some kind of recommendations and some kind of predictions, right? While we can use RPA to automate processing of things, right? And yes, you're right, providers, right, they have, sometimes very unique requirements depending on certain situations. And when you combine these two technologies, you can get very specific. Now, it's not easy, right? Like, as anybody that ever tried to document these business processes will probably say, oh my God, this is not easy to sit down and really document. And that's true. It's not easy. It does require a lot of upfront work to truly understand what is going on. But look, so it does with any other digital transformation. There's no single digital transformation I did that you didn't have to spend a lot of time on the business process and to understand what's going on, right? So yeah, I mean, definitely AI can help in that, and it's like you say, nimble enough. And to me, that I kind of think of it as how small can it be to deal with individual requirements that are very unique, or how large, like I said, and scalable can it be so that it can accommodate with a lot of things, right? So the truth is there's a lot of flexibility, and there's a danger in that too, right? So let's not forget that, right? The fact that you have flexibility doesn't mean that you should always go for very custom and very, very flexible kind of components. There's an opportunity potentially to investigate the business processes and change them as well.
Got it. Standardize and use it for needs.
Yeah. I mean, wherever possible, right? Because I mean, you have to keep in mind that somebody somewhere is going to have to maintain this. Right? And maintaining an artificial intelligence solution compared to, let's say, standard, non-artificial intelligence solution is not as easy. It's harder to go back and try to re-understand what models were doing if you didn't do all the proper documentation and everything else. And this is not, again, hypothetical. This goes back to my comment about AI leaving the lab very quickly. It left the lab in such a manner that a lot of organizations don't actually have good documentations of what actually is going on and how things are working. And that's the danger in this thing. This is where, again, like I said, Trustvector and what we do becomes really important to be able to understand what is going on, to have a vector, a multidimensional vector in this case, across 5 or 6 dimensions, to tells you how far, what are you doing and what you need to improve, so that ultimately, it can become easier to kind of maintain these solutions.
Got it. So recently I went to the Dallas-Fort Worth CIO HIMSS roundtable, and I met the CIOs there who work at these providers. And one of them, I questioned her, hey, if we need AI, what would be that one thing you want to, I want it really AI to be implemented for this? And she told me diagnosis and treatment. So can you tell me like how AI is playing a role? I know you did mention about reading the images. Can you tell me like from broadly how it can be implemented?
Yeah, I think that image analysis obviously is one of those examples. Providers sit on large amounts of data, and the whole idea around analyzing that data and based on certain features of within that data, servicing up recommendations for potential diagnosis of treatments can only be helpful to the providers, right? And so, what do I mean by that, right? Because of such large amount of data, you could focus on particular diseases that are seen at the provider specifically, analyze patient cohorts that fit within those, for example, diseases and other parameters, and based on what is being seen, be able to flag next time a doctor sees another patient that fits similar criteria, be able to flag up potential concerns or potential recommendations for procedures or I don't want to say recommendation for diagnosis because they have to have diagnosis themselves, but at least be able to surface up from that large amount of data something that is very relevant to this patient, so that providers can then go deeper, accept recommendation, don't accept recommendation, or go in a different direction, whichever way, right? But I think that her comment, I think, is right on. You need to leverage the amount of data that you're sitting on, and you need to leverage it in the right way, right? Now, I gave you an example of this. This was a real example where unfortunately, in the process of doing something like this, right, the design unfortunately called for a feature that negatively impacted population because it was used as a proxy for something else, right? I talked about the cost of procedures versus the needs, and so those are real examples. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to continue to use it. We need to just fix things and be very, very diligent about what it is that we're using and how we're using it, right? So that's, to me, that's from the diagnosis perspective and recommendation maybe of treatments. I think that can be really, really, really helpful, just given the amount of data that is available there. Yeah. So I kind of I guess tackled a little bit of both. I started with more recommendations around treatment, right? But the help around diagnosis is really rooted in ability to quickly process, again, large maybe medical scans or other types of medical data, and then again surface up flags for HCPs and doctors to kind of look at and things that they would have maybe missed in the past. Right. I think that those are great examples, and I can totally see where the value would come in, and this is it will be win-win for everyone, right? There's more efficiency. Now doctors are able to spend more time, hopefully, or at least see more patients because they're getting some of these recommendations, right? And then in the process, we're surfacing up some new things that should get the patient to the required treatment faster. As opposed to kind of the old ways. And I think that some of this, can be really important in areas that some for example, relatively rare diseases where you don't have a lot of data, but you still have to find something. You still have to try and help doctors, right? I mean, there are methods to really try and work on certain predictions to at least get them in the right direction, right? So, anyway, I see a lot of capabilities for AI to really help everybody.
Cool. So I want to tell you one thing. Like recently, I wrote a beautiful love letter to my wife, and she was highly impressed. But what she doesn't know is it was generated through Chat GPT. So my burning question is, am I like it generally like people are going to start depending on these AI solutions? Am I going to become dumb? Am I going to stop making my own decisions?
I hate to break it to you, but we're all very dependent already, and we're not making some of the decisions on our own. But so here's the story, right? It's 1987-ish. I'm not even a teenager. My parents are planning the road trip. We're going to the seaside. It's like 700 miles or so, or maybe 400 miles, I should say. And we decided not to fly that year. We decided to drive. So my dad pulled up a road map, right? The most current one that was issued that year. And, we together, I remember sitting down with him, and it was fun. We were going and deciding, okay, roughly where do we need to stop to refuel in all of this? Question for you, when was the last time you used a physical map to navigate anywhere?
Maybe 10, 12 years ago? Not even, maybe more than that, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like before Google Maps, right?
Before Google Maps, yeah. There was Garmin Maps, and before that probably, yeah.
Right, exactly. And like today, I would venture to guess that you always use like Google Maps or Waze or something like that, right?
Right.
And it makes sense, right? It's an evolution of technology, and it's where it's there. Why not use it? But there's a twist to this as well, right? I'm willing to bet that you still use. Do you use Google Maps or Waze or like what do you use?
Google Maps.
Google. Okay. So I'm willing to bet that you, just like me, use Google Maps even when you go to places where you know exactly how to get to. If for nothing else, to see what are the alternate routes and what is the traffic.
Right.
And so you didn't make that decision. Ultimately, you didn't make a decision to go down a particular route. Artificial intelligence that is built into Google Maps has helped you make that decision and say, look, there's a collision on the interstate. It's going to take you 2 hours. You're better off taking the side road. You're going to save 25, 30 minutes.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, on the way, you can also stop to your favorite ice cream shop, right? So you get there, you're early, right? And then you have time to, ponder the new world order and how to help it. I'm kidding. I know you're on Instagram probably saving that time. My point is, we are already dependent on a lot of artificial intelligence. We're just not aware of it, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it's not a bad thing at all because, yes, it's getting you to a particular place faster, right? Does it make mistakes? Yeah. The other day, it sent me down the road that I thought, yeah, of course it makes sense. There's no traffic. I will take the interstate and I'll go that way. But it didn't know that there was a new barrier that was put in place because of some construction. So I wasn't able to get off the interstate in the next exit, and I had to go, extra route. So it happens. Whatever, I wasted a little bit of time. Not that dangerous, right? But so it's not perfect, right? It's evolving, but it's in most cases better than what we normally do. So did that make you any less smart, right? That you're not using this or not that? I don't think so, right? Like my point is that this is a normal evolution. We're in the new, let's call it industrial age, right? Whatever you want to call it, and we are simply going to learn how to utilize artificial intelligence to the best of our ability. Now, there's a need to be more aware of what it is that is being used, and this is where we go to Chat GPT or equivalent products, right? I'm totally not against the fact that you can, generate a love letter, right, or generate a draft for something, right? That's totally cool. But there is a danger if you generate and just publish, meaning you haven't read through it. It doesn't have any of your thoughts or your adjustments to it, right? I think that's where the danger is, and it's going to be very individual, right? We're going to see that happen. Like we're going to see people generate a lot of news and so on and so forth, right, based on things that are not factual. That's going to happen, and we're going to have to become smarter at figuring that out, and living with it, and understanding when something is factual or not. And we're going to make mistakes, but hopefully, with legislation and everything else, we'll get to the point where solutions are going to have trusted marks, that say our solution has been verified. We had a third-party solution. Somebody came in that has looked at this and is constantly looking, it's auditing us. And it's, this is a solution that can be trusted by others to be used, right? So anyhow, sorry, that's a long answer to your very, I think, simple question. But I think the reality is we are dependent on AI. There's no doubt about it. We're going to be more dependent as new solutions come up. And resistance is futile. There's no way you're going to be resisting and not using artificial intelligence. However, right, lots of caution, lots of regulations are needed. I can't emphasize that more and more. A lot of training for people to understand what's going on and what they're using potentially, and what are the dangers of it. And that we're just going to have to kind of live through that piece. A lot of people ask, is it going to eliminate a bunch of jobs? And there's the standard response of, well, no, the AI is there to augment. Let's cut through the chase. There's absolutely no doubt that artificial intelligence is going to improve things. And as an industrial society, in a capitalist society, it will eliminate certain jobs. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can't sit here and argue with me that no, all the jobs are going to remain the same. That's not going to happen. It is going to change how we operate and what we do. However, it's going to create new jobs as well.
Right.
The concept of this would not exist. The auditing of artificial intelligence solutions, there would be no need for such a thing if artificial intelligence solutions didn't exist. So it's creating a brand new, for example, industry, right? So there's going to be a lot of, everything is a balance, right? Yeah, certain jobs are probably going to go away, but most jobs are going to be enhanced. We're not going to lose doctors because they have artificial intelligence system that help them analyze images. We're still going to need a doctor. But and there's going to be some new ones that are created, and I kind of look at it that way, right? Every time we've gone through some kind of industrial revolution, things have changed. There's no doubt about it. And there's no, I'm simply not a pessimist, and maybe it's me. I'm a realist, I would say, right? That this is the reality. It's coming, and we have to find the right way to use it in a safe way to basically use it.
Right. And probably people had the same questions probably back then when calculator was invented. Like, oh, my job is going to go away. Or even when computers were invented, when my father was afraid, everything was done manually. We all had something to do. Now, computer is going to do everything. But here we are in a much enhanced society, right? And there's definitely a lot of work to do for everyone.
There is. And, and there's no, somebody mentioned this, it was about, I don't remember if it was about DALL-E, right? The Chat GPT equivalent for creating images, or there was another one, I don't remember the name of it right now. But somebody mentioned that, just because those solutions exist and you can generate beautiful images, it doesn't mean that a value of an artist doesn't exist anymore. But that doesn't mean you still should learn how to be an artist if you want to be an artist. So, calculator is a perfect example, right? I'm not going to let my kids have a calculator now. Like my 5-year-old is already adding numbers. He's learning multiplication and all of these things. He doesn't know that calculator exists, and he shouldn't. I want him to. This is the stage when they're developing their brains, right? I want them to develop. I want them to practice those things. Eventually, when the time is needed, yes, they will learn how to use certain technology and do certain potentially shortcuts, right? But I think there's a huge responsibility on parents to make sure that they learn basically in the best way and that they're developed in the best way. And I'm totally not concerned that they're going to, are they ever going to learn how to use an iPhone? Oh my God. Yeah. they will learn how to use iPhone like this. It'll be no problem at all.
Right. Wonderful. So, I really enjoyed the conversation, Alex. It was so much knowledge I gained out of this. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for being on the show.
Anytime. I really appreciate you inviting me. And good luck with all of the other podcasts. I'm looking forward to watching them all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.